Welcome to the Spa Girls podcast, the self-publishing podcast for authors. You're in the right place for the best writing, marketing, and publishing advice, plus interviews with industry experts and best-selling authors. I'm Cheryl Phipps.
I'm Shah Barrett.
And I'm Wendy Valla, and we have an amazing guest with us today. We have Kevin Tumlinson. Welcome from Texas.
Hello.
And
Hi.
we haven't had him on for 7 years. We were doing
Which
the
is
numbers.
that is both strange to me and a travesty. That
Yeah.
should not
That should
not have been
have
7
happened.
years.
It should
Yeah.
not have
Yeah.
been 7. So much has happened. But let me just
Yeah.
read your short bio, which I know is short, and there's a lot more to you, but this is what you sent us. So away we go. Kevin Tumlinson is an award-winning and best-selling author known as the voice of publishing, which, can I just say, is very cool, for his work as a podcaster and speaker, helping thousands of authors to start, build, and grow their author career. Kevin is the Chief Brand Officer for Author Anchor, a service aimed at connecting writers to highly trained and qualified virtual assistants so they can hand off the tough tasks of their author business and just write. Welcome, Kevin.
Yeah. So after that, I don't even need to do the interview. That's the whole thing.
There
You know
you go.
what? I'm sure your
And
bio
where can
was
be
about-
where can you be found, Kevin?
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Okay, so how about you've done a lot since you left Draft to Digital, all sorts of things, but how about we start with just a little short of your journey, what's been happening with you, and then lead into Author Anchor.
Yeah. So I left Draft to Digital very amicably, very favorably back in like 2023, sort of the tag end of the year. And I briefly stepped into the role of CEO of Book Sweeps. Everyone's always curious about that. And which was also an amicable parting. It just wasn't working. And so I've been full time as a author now for the past year or so. And I got approached by the guys from BookBrush to kind of consult on this thing that they'd already built. They had a few authors who were already participating, and wasn't long before they asked you, like, what would you think about just kind of representing this out in the wild and be the face of this? And I'm like, well, I've kind of got a nice little career going of being the voice of this and the face of that, and these are the hands of writing. They're the hands that do the writing. So yeah, I just said, sure, cut me a deal. Let's figure it out. And so they did. They made me a great offer. And it was just sort of I don't know. I'm real big on connecting with and serving this community that I'm a part of, and so it just kind of felt like a click. So here I am.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Author Anchor. What is Author Anchor? What do you
Author
offer?
Anchor. Yeah, so it was created by the folks who bring you BookBrush, if you're familiar with BookBrush. It is exactly as I described it in that bio, actually. It was built to connect authors with virtual assistants, meaning, people, not AI. We got a lot of discussion about AI these days, but these are human beings who can help you with certain needs of your business. And we do this in an affordable way because this all started, frankly, because people kept asking BookBrush, do you have any done for you marketing services? And the reality of that is there's no real business model that works for a done for you marketing service that's both affordable for authors and profitable for the business. There's a lot of them out there that do well, that are a good investment, but it's a high dollar, high ticket kind of thing. But what we found is if you had someone who was specifically trained to help you with those aspects of your business, then it did become affordable. And so that's where Author Anchor kind of came from. Its origins were like, how do we build something that authors can actually afford? It's not for everybody. I mean, I'll put that right up front. But if you have reached a certain level of success as an author, it's kind of a justifiable expense to be able to hand some things off. And there's all kinds of tasks you can hand off, not just the marketing. So that's sort of the origins of it.
Because virtual assistants, all of that's quite a big topic at the moment. I think more and more people, I notice we get a lot of questions in our group
Yeah.
about from other authors just starting out, when should I get an assistant? What do I need an assistant for? How do I
Right.
find an assistant? So
Yeah.
if you can touch on that a little bit.
Well, as far as when you should get an assistant, my sort of rule of thumb that I've been giving people is the one consideration is this should not be something that you have to figure out how to afford. If you're kind of stressing over like, well, how am I going to afford because the base rate here is going to be around $300 a month, right? Um, and I can get into how that breaks down in a moment, but you shouldn't be asking yourself like, well, how am I going to come up with $300 a month to pay for this person to take this stuff over? That's the wrong time to consider it a VA. The right time is, if I spent this $300 on someone to help me with these tasks, it would actually increase my revenue earning potential. That's the time to bring someone on board. It's just like any business. Authors get told all the time that we should treat this like a business. The problem is that a lot of us never went to business school. We don't particularly want to be business people. We just want to write.
Yeah.
That's why most of us got into this business. So treating it like a business is smart, but doing it isn't what we were built for. But a business is designed around this idea that there are going to be different people assigned to different tasks within the organization, right? So if you think of your author career as an author business, so your job, you want your job to be, I'm the person who creates the stuff. I'm the person who writes the books. And then I've got, someone who takes care of these other details. And maybe you've got one person or maybe you've got a dozen people. But that's the way organizations work. And so now you can kind of streamline this a little. I forget what the second part of the question was. What was the rest
I
of the
think
question?
I was just about, I think it was mainly about when do we get an author? When is the right
Yeah.
time to get it? How do you know it's the right time? I think the next question that we would lead on to from that would be, how do we go looking for one? I mean, you want the
Yeah.
right
Where do
fit,
you find
right?
one? Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
get the right fit? You know,
Well, where you find one is you go to
as it turns
authoranchor.com.
out.
Speedway, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, and how determining a good fit is important. Here's how this works, actually. So I'm going to give you a special URL that'll let you book what we call a discovery call. Um, and with that URL, you can actually get $50 off of your first month with this.
Wow,
So we'll
thank
go through
you.
all that. I definitely want to discuss that because money is always a touchy
Huge.
subject. But
Mhm.
here's how this works. You would set up a discovery call and you're going to talk to somebody within the organization and they're going to walk you through and ask you like what your needs are. And I've been telling people to come in with two lists, but you need to start with what's this main primary pain point that you have that you need to resolve. Okay. What you need to know is like you don't expect that you're going to pay this person and like this laundry list of things that you need done is going to be able to be done by this one person in a mere 40 hours a month,
Yeah.
right? It's like
Yeah.
10 hours a week. But what you can do is you come in with a single pain point is a good starting place. So like if you need to get a grip on your social media and marketing, then maybe that's what you're asking about. If you need somebody to do copywriting for you, maybe you need somebody to help you with doing book cover design. You can actually ask for people who have design skills, cutting video for you. You know, yeah, there's a list of things that you might have a need for. So figure out what the primary need is, and you come in with that. But I also tell people like make sure you come in with kind of your wish lists. And I tell people you need two lists. You need one, the list of all the like, I wish I could hand these things off because I hate them. You need that list. I
I've all
hate
got
all
those.
these things, right? And
Okay.
then the other list would be, I wish I had these skills or someone to do these things for me. And so you're coming in with those lists. You're going to have this one primary thing. That's the thing you're really hiring them for. But if you then just say, these are other things that I wish I had or wish I didn't have to do, then we're going to help kind of narrow down the best choice for you. So where we're going to start is find you somebody to deal with that primary pain point, right?
Mhm.
Somebody who's going to take care of social media, or somebody who's going to take care of running your ads for you, or building your Shopify store, or running your Kickstarter campaigns, whatever it is that you really need that you don't have the time for. This is the person that's going to do it for you. We're going to focus first on that person. And then we're also going to make sure that they have as many of the additional skills as we can as we can get for you. So you need to temper your expectations a little. Like you can't just come in saying like I want somebody who's going to run my Kickstarter store, but also build my website and also manage my newsletter and also
Yeah.
run my social media and do video editing. The chances are if that person has all those skills right off the bat, they're probably already working for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to temper your expectations a little. But that doesn't mean you're not going to get somebody who is just phenomenal. It just means that your expectations need to be that like we're going to solve one major problem first, and then we're going to stack. Because frankly, if you brought someone in that is going to set up your Shopify store, you only need that done once, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
you could end the deal after the first month or so if they've done that, if that's all you needed them for. Um, you know, clearly, we would prefer you didn't do that. But if they've got these secondary skills, because by the way, there's no contract, right? So you can end
Oh,
this
okay. Yeah.
at the end of each term. But if they've got these secondary skills that could be helpful, so you go and you say, I need someone to set up my Shopify, and then I need them to monitor that over time and help me with, I'm going to send them a stack of my signed books. And that's one of the things I sell on Shopify. And I want them to drop ship it for me. There's all kinds of things that could possibly
Yeah.
happen here.
Yeah.
So you discover, though, what the limitations are and what the possibilities are when you do this discovery call with
Mhm.
our team.
Yeah. So
And I
do
Was that a
you,
also think
long-winded
probably
answer?
from,
That was a
yeah,
pretty
no, it was
long.
no,
great.
it's a
Great.
great answer. And I
Yeah.
also think from the author perspective too, if people are coming into it that haven't necessarily run businesses before in a different sphere,
Yeah.
it's new for them as well, having people
Yeah.
that are working for them and the ability to communicate, and learn that kind of style as well. So it's
Yeah. Yeah.
probably a bit of a learning on their part too.
Yeah.
And also,
There is a learning.
sorry,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and also the idea of actually giving up some of your control, like how do you
Yeah.
choose which you're going to be comfortable with? And, like, can you let go to a certain extent? Because I think that would be quite
Yeah.
important.
So that's I want to address that because that's important. First of all, one of the things that happened when I first started using a VA was you do have to temper your expectations because they're not going to come in just knowing everything about your business and everything about how to work with you. So there's a period of training, but it's two-way training because not only are you teaching them, but you're also learning as you go how you best communicate with each other, what the limitations are for, both them and you, what tools you need, what tools you don't need, So when I first started working with a VA, like my first couple of weeks, I'm like, well, maybe I made a mistake here because I'm working twice as hard as I was before I brought someone
Mhm.
on board because I'm having to teach them all these things. They come in knowing quite a bit. We have mandatory training, um, and there's a certain, skill level they have to reach, and one of those is like a proficiency in English, written and oral, things like that. There's certain basics, but we also have this like recurring mandatory training every month where they learn something author related. Like one month we'll do training on Kickstarter, one month we do BookBub,
Oh,
one
that's
month we
cool.
do a book funnel. And so they're learning something new every month that's related to your business. You can also request things, hey, I would love it if she could do this, he could do this, because it's not, I don't want to, pigeonhole a gender into this because we've got male and female doing this. But you want to ask for what you need, and we can try to figure out a way to accommodate that. Sometimes that can happen, sometimes it can't happen. Um, anyway, I think I jumped off track there and now I've derailed myself. But the training. So, one thing I tell I've started telling authors is I've come up with, I think, is like an ideal first assignment, uh, because you can leverage this to both basically you can learn how to work with each other through this. But let's say, and I use Kickstarter all the time as the example, but let's say that you want someone to help you, build and run and promote a successful Kickstarter campaign. That I would make that the first assignment. Just say, hey, look, I want you to build and promote and flesh out a successful Kickstarter campaign. I want you to actually write a process for that. So let me loop back. That's what you're asking for first, is a process for building and promoting a successful Kickstarter campaign. And the reason this is perfect is because, you say, look, take 2 hours and give me a process on this. They take that 2 hours, and then in that time, you're going to communicate with each other. So you get to figure out whether or not you prefer doing your communication via email, or whether you want to use WhatsApp, or whether you want to use Discord or Slack, or you can kind of work that out. You can figure out the best way to track these hours, track the projects they're working on. You can find out what their proficiency is. You can, once they hand you that procedure, you can say, okay, look, let's take this out, let's add this in, let's tweak it this way, take 2 more hours and fix it, whatever. By the time you're done with your first week of working with them, that one project has trained the two of you on how best to communicate and work with each other. And it's also given you a process so that if this VA for some reason leaves or doesn't work out, you now have something you can use to train the next person. Ideally, if you're bringing someone else in, your previous VA would train them, but sometimes things don't work out. My first VA, she was getting her master's degree, putting herself through grad school with this stuff, I figured, well, she's going to leave anytime. Like there's no
Yeah.
chance that she's going to be with me 10
Yeah.
years from now, because she's getting a grad degree. So having her create a series of processes that I could then hand off to the next VA helped me a lot, but it also was a great first project for learning how to work with each other.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. I mean, let's get to the point of costing, because a lot of
Yeah.
people talk about VAs and what they're paying. Oh, we've had conversations with so many people, and it differs
Yeah.
hugely. I mean,
Yes, it does. Yeah.
my daughter works for me, so she just basically tells me what I have to pay her, so that's the difference. But other people who don't employ their child, what sort of pricing, what sort of costing is involved?
Yeah. So here's how I'm going to give you the breakdown of how our whole process works, and then we can talk about other things. But our rates are this: we have a $99 platform fee. That's a monthly recurring fee. That's the money that Author Anchor makes, and we use that. There's some of that gets used for some, like the training. Gets used to, there's various things that come out of that, software licenses and stuff that we need. So that's our part. The VAs, the minimum for them is $5 an hour at a minimum of 10 hours a week, and that gets paid to them directly. We don't take any part of that money. You pay it to them directly. You can decide to give them a raise, a bonus, whatever you like. We actually recommend that you do that if they've been, serving you well for a while. Give them a raise, because, $5 an hour it's not a lot of money to us. It's a lot of money to them, but it's still a gig economy kind of rate. So if you decide that they're really working out for you, you are more than welcome to raise that up. And a
Can
lot
I
of people
just
do.
ask, Kevin, so I'm assuming these VAs aren't based in the States for that hourly
They're
rate?
not. Yes. Yeah. Yes, yes, I should have gotten to that sooner. But yes, so we source these VAs from the Philippines, and that there's a culture there of sort of supporting remote work. It's very prevalent there. So and frankly, there's not a lot of jobs. There's not a lot of things. There's not a lot of things they can do to
Yeah.
earn money. And so this is really a great opportunity. And like I said, like my VA, my previous VA, she was putting herself through grad school. She got a really nice apartment that she was renting with a friend. I've seen it. It was really nice, nicer than my first apartment for sure. She was the first person in her family to buy a car. So,
Wow.
this is, what's not a lot of money for us, it's like a hamburger for us each hour is, pretty
Yeah.
good money
Yeah.
for these folks. And so, because that exchange rate, it's like 50 to 1. They have the Philippine peso is their currency, and it's like, it's a 50 to 1 exchange rate. So, yeah, so they are sourced in the Philippines, and people ask me all the time if we are planning to source from elsewhere, and perhaps, but they'd have to be willing to work at that rate, and there aren't a lot of U.S. workers who are going to be able to do that. The cost of living here is just not, compatible with that, but
Mm.
you never know. I mean, could happen.
I should have asked originally, how long is it all author Anchor been going? How long have you been in it?
Oh yeah. So it's been around for a while, at least a year or so. We've had a lot of people kind of using it in a beta phase, like Russell Nolte, for example. He's been using a VA, I think about a year. When I came on to sort of consult was back in February of this year,
Yeah.
and that was, I think, their final missing piece was to figure out how they were going to promote this. And so I'm kind of like a one man marketing department sometimes. And
Yeah.
so once I was on board, they launched in March of this year. So it hasn't been around very long. I mean, it's
Mm.
been around about a month.
So the
And
advantage for an author of using
yeah,
this as opposed to maybe going to the same workers or the same VAs on, say, Fiverr, is that you guys
right.
are in the intermediary kind of thing. You're the, you
So
know,
there's a couple of advantages there. One, if you have a problem, you come to us and we will fix it, right? So like,
Hmm.
if your VA is not doing the work, we can find you a new VA. We'll take care of the vetting on your behalf.
yeah.
The other side of it is that training. They're being specifically trained for author
Yeah.
related stuff.
Yeah.
I was at the Writer MBA conference last month, um, and I'm looking around the room, and this is what I was telling people in my talks. Like, if you look around this whole conference, all those vendors that you see, we had this little event where everyone goes from table to table to meet all the vendors. Like all those vendors, we're training the authors to work with each of those vendors over
Mm.
time.
Yeah.
And so, all these services that overwhelm you when you go,
Yeah.
like if you go to these conferences, like, oh God, I got to learn how to use this thing now,
And
uh,
that's the truth, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's so
yeah,
much. It's like overload at the moment, isn't it?
Right.
yeah,
Two
yeah,
years ago, the term forced edges and something
Oh,
else edges
yeah.
on like special editions wasn't even really a conversation that the
Yeah.
majority of people were having.
One
right.
thing that
Yeah,
impressed me with your with your VAs is that because I've attended a couple of your online interviews with some of them,
yeah.
is
So
that
you've
they
heard
already
everything I'm
bring
saying here before.
pardon.
So you've heard
Pardon?
everything I'm saying here before.
Oh, to lesser or greater degrees, but the fact that they are already bringing to the table a lot of skills, and
Yeah,
the fact that BookBrush is then um, introducing them to skills that BookBrush themselves use and know that authors use. I think that that's
yeah,
quite a good thing. They're not starting from scratch, and that I love
right.
that because
Yeah,
with an author, it's like you said, that overwhelm of, oh my gosh, now I've got
yeah.
to teach them, I've got to work twice as hard. Nobody
Yeah,
wants.
we're specifically looking for VAs who already have some kind of experience doing something, even if it's just, a lot, we've got experts, they've become experts in certain things like Kickstarter and web design and graphic design, video editing, they can do that. They've got equipment, they've got their own applications. Um, you're going to want to supply them with some of your own resources, by the way. Working with my VA, I gave her access to things like my Canva account,
Yeah.
for example.
So there's a
And
certain amount of trust, right, for that.
yeah, and I use a tool called LastPass you may have heard of. It's like a password sharing tool. But once you build a certain level of trust, and that's what this is, right? Over time, you've got to build trust. That's what all employer-employee relationships are,
Yeah.
is somebody's got to learn to trust at some point.
Mm.
There's always a chance somebody's going to, screw you over, but um, you safeguard as much as
Yeah.
possible. LastPass actually has a way for you to share your credit card information. You share the credit card usage basically. So you can actually, like I had her book my hotel for the conference. I didn't have her book the flight because I hadn't worked that part out yet. But she took care of all that, and she never saw my credit card at all. She just logged in, used the account through LastPass, and it was taken care of. Uh, and certain safeguards you can put in place with that. So yeah, trust. There's a certain trust that you're going to have to build, and I wouldn't just willy-nilly hand this stuff over to the VA on the first day.
No.
But once you get to know them and they've done some things for you, and you start to kind of branch out. And some people are never going to be comfortable with that, and you don't have to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
But I had her set up with a Gmail account that I could access if I needed to. But so she was emailing on my behalf. I mostly used my VA. I used my VA for public relations and getting me out there, reaching out on my behalf. I think that's actually how. I think she reached out to you guys actually, didn't
Yes,
she?
she did. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So
that's
sorry,
cool.
I
Oh,
cut
it
you off
worked.
before when we were talking about pricing, Kevin, but just going back
Yeah.
to, so the base price was $99, $100 a month
Mm.
for the kind of the
Yeah.
service fee, if you like. And then what would you say would be a good number? You mentioned before about authors having kind of an easy spend of $300 US
Yeah.
a month. So would that
So
be around 200 on the VA sort of side of things? Like, would you,
yeah.
just starting off, what would, yeah, in
So
terms of
yeah, and
hours?
I should clarify. I say $100, but it's really $99
Mm-hmm.
a month for the service. So it comes out to when you the minimum is $5 an hour for 10 hours a week,
Right.
and you do that for a month. That's what you're committing to, and that's
Got
as
you.
much as you're ever committing to.
Yeah.
So it's like $299
Mm-hmm.
for a month. That's US
Yeah.
dollars.
Yeah.
I don't know what that translates to in New Zealand dollars.
Yeah.
Double
Probably
it.
about 5,000
Pretty
at the
much,
moment.
just $5,000.
Oh, actually,
You know.
no, I have to say, actually, no, strangely, I don't know what's happening in the US at the moment, but the actual exchange rate's improved for us, but we won't go there.
Yeah.
So
We don't touch on that. Move
no,
on.
we won't. So that gets you quite a number of hours, right? Like that gets you
Yeah,
a lot of
40
hours,
hours.
that's
actually.
40 hours a month.
Yeah.
And that's for most of for what most authors need, that's more than plenty.
Yeah.
If I have her reaching out on my behalf to podcasts and things, like it kind of gets to a point where you might actually stress a little about what you can hand off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's where you want to start coming up with recurring tasks that you can take off your plate. The whole idea here, this is the point. This is why you would want a VA, and you should only get a VA if you meet this criteria. But what you're trying to do is remove as many burdens from yourself as you can, so that you can just write. That's the whole point, right? So if there are these little pesky things that kind of keep coming up and taking all your time, that's a good thing to look at. Email for me is a stressor. So I won't use email to communicate with my VA. I set up a Slack channel that we use. But you could use Discord, you could use, whatever. But I don't want to deal with email. So that's why I created an email account for her to use. She can, I can dip in and check on it. And if there's a problem, so I check my email once or twice a day. That's my rule. I'll probably at some point hand off that task because I don't like dealing with email, and just have her update me in Slack. Hey, you got an email about this, you need to deal with this. That's another one of those, like, as we build trust, because, email is a very private thing sometimes. And so, so there's that. Yeah, that's the whole point is you, like I said at the start of this, you should never try to figure out how to justify the expense. That means you don't need a VA. If you can't figure it, if you're stressing over, like, I want to bring someone in, but I don't know how I can afford it, that's the wrong time to consider it. The caveat to that would be, if you were going to go spend $300 or so on marketing anyway, you might consider getting a VA to handle the marketing. Um, Now, here's the deal. You know, the money that you pay for the VA service is just for the VA's time, right? So if there's an expense like ad dollars or things like that, that's going to be on top of this.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of marketing you can do that doesn't cost any money, just costs time, and that's ideal to hand off. But if you do have a marketing budget and you're going to do ad spend, asking for somebody who can handle your Facebook ads or your Amazon ads or both, or BookBub ads or all that, um, is a good idea. That if that's something you need, that's
Yeah.
a good thing to come in as that primary problem pain point that you're trying to solve, and
Mm.
they'll find somebody who can do that.
Big
And most
idea.
people, if they can run one ad platform, they can run all of them. I mean,
Yeah.
they're not dramatically different. And
Yeah.
so, asking for somebody who has that skill set is a good first step. If marketing is what you want to do, the two things I would ask for are somebody who can handle ads and somebody who's decent at copywriting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
Because we always say to ourselves, "Oh, I can do that, and it won't take me long." Like TikTok, every day I'll go on and I
Yeah.
put on a TikTok. It takes me way longer than I originally thought, and then that's put me back another hour for, it's those things that, yeah, I don't think we really
Yeah.
realize how long things take us, and if we actually work
Well,
out,
I don't know if you guys have ever read this book. There's a book by Hemingway called The Old Man and the Sea. You know this book?
I
And
know it, but I haven't read it. Yeah.
so the premise here is he catches this giant like marlin, and it's like the fish of a lifetime. If he takes this fish back, it's going to make it's going to support his family for the rest of his life. I mean, it's that big. So he straps it to his boat and he's motoring back to the pier, and all these little fish keep taking chunks out of it because it's too big to go in his boat. So they're just taking little chunks out of it. And by the time he gets it back, most of the fish is gone because it's been eaten by the little fish. This is my flawed memory of the story, but this is the metaphor I use a lot. So that's what happens to writers. Our time is our marlin. The thing that we want to use that time for most is producing that book. That's why we got into this. There are some writers who absolutely love the marketing. They would probably be just as happy doing all the marketing themselves, all the TikTok videos. Fine. You don't need to use a VA for that if it's something you love. Don't hand off things you love to the VA just to hand things off. But if there's something that's preventing you from doing the things that you love, if this task, if building and running your Shopify store is keeping you from doing the TikTok videos that you want to do, then that's a good time to bring someone in to help you out. And $300 a month is a pretty low rate to get someone in. My first VA, before I ever started doing anything with these guys, I had a VA that cost me, well, my first VA was like $80 an hour. And then I found someone who would do it for 50. And both of them let me down so severely all the
Wow.
time. Like one of them, I said, this was early days. I said, hey, go find me every writing podcast and every writing YouTube channel that does interviews and make a list for me so that we can start contacting them. She went on Google and she Googled it and gave me the first page results. And like 3 or 4 of those podcasts were my own. Like, because I do a ton of podcasts, right? So
Yeah.
she gave me a list of my own podcasts. And so she didn't do any vetting, and I was paying like $50 an hour for this person. Versus, I bring in my new VA from Author Anchor. I give her the same assignment. I gave her my list of existing podcasts. She went out and she found the ones that were, still active. She, crafted a pitch. We worked on that.
Wow.
Perfect? No. There was still some room to grow on the pitch, but I think she did a fair job, a really good job. By the way, what I've learned is because people ask me this all the time about AI. Well,
Just
what if they
touch
just
on
go
that.
off and
Yeah.
use AI? And I'm like, good, that's them. You want them to do that. So here's the thing. If they're using AI to make their job faster and easier, it means that you get more value out of that $5 an hour you're paying, right? That hour you're paying for is now exponentially greater because they're using AI tools to make their work go faster,
Yeah.
and you don't have to learn how to do any of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So you definitely want them to learn how to use these AI tools.
Is there
absolutely.
anything that you really feel that you shouldn't ask a VA to do? Like, is anything sort of off the table? Like, I'm thinking like your KDP account or something like that.
All that's going to come down to the individual and the amount of trust you have. I am leery about handing over things that can give some sort of financial
Yeah.
access.
Yeah.
Your KDP account to me, there's not much there that's going to do you a ton of damage unless they really screwed up on uploading a book or whatever.
Mhm.
But by the time they do something like that, you really should have
Yeah.
like very strong
No,
trust
them.
in this
Yeah.
person. Like you should have worked with them, showed them how to do it, experimented. It shouldn't be, hey, look, here's access to my account. Go upload all these
Yeah.
covers. You
Yeah.
know, um, no, I think that ultimately there's very little that you couldn't ultimately hand off.
Yeah.
Certain physical things will be more challenging. Like they're not going to be able to go pick up your dry cleaning unless you want to pay a lot of shipping costs. Uh, but they might be able to do something like um, I'm pulling from my experience with the whole 4 hour work week thing here, but like well, they could order flowers on your behalf or go pick
Mm.
up something from a local shop in their area and using your credit card and ship it. And
Yeah.
there's all kinds of tasks you could have them do. But yeah, there are of course limitations. There are of course things you're going to want to be a little cautious about. All I can say for sure is that over time, you'll learn to trust this person, or you will know that you can't trust them with something.
Mhm.
You start with very small things that aren't going to break your bank if they go wrong or whatever.
Mm.
But there can come a point where you can say, look, if something comes up, you've got access to the credit card. You can take care of anything under $500.
Yeah.
You know, if you feel comfortable with that, and you can even go up from there, or maybe it's just 20. Anything that's $20 or less, you can take care
Mm.
of. That sort of thing is you build up to that kind of trust, but it's also comes down to your risk tolerance. It comes down to what you can afford and what kind of mistakes you can afford. Because like if they get it in their head that they can just go spend $500 on just anything
Yeah.
anytime they want, that's a problem. But
You got
you
to have
know,
boundaries, right?
yeah,
You got to have boundaries.
communication is the biggest thing here, right? Just like a
Yeah.
marriage, just like a relationship of any kind.
Yeah.
So you want to be clear. This is what's really important is to be clear about expectations, clear about how you communicate, clear about how you want to track and see results.
Yeah.
Um, as long as you are very clear about that. One wonderful thing that happens with this, by the way, and this kind of comes down to like, I could do it better myself. Why would I hand it off? This forces you to streamline and automate as much as possible. Like
Mhm.
I have, for example, my Wordslinger podcast. Um, I, when I first started that thing, and for the longest time, it would take me hours to produce a show. But when I started working with someone to kind of help me with the production and posting part, I wanted to streamline it because I don't want to pay, for hours of time. I don't want to pay someone for 4 hours to produce an episode. That's like half the week, right?
Mm. Mm.
With a 10-hour week, that's like half of the time gone. So it forced me to automate, streamline, create templates, to make that process very efficient. And that took a lot of time on my part, but when it was done, it was done. And once I handed it over, I could say now it takes me 10 minutes to do like it takes me longer to record the episode than it does to produce the episode,
Mm.
which is exactly the way it should be. So,
Yeah.
I take a half hour to an hour, maybe I do an interview, maybe I'm talking to the camera and then they can take that, drop it into the template, cut it, uh, drop the ads that are going in that week, whatever is required for that episode, and have it up on YouTube and on Substack. And it took them 10 or 15 minutes. And
Yeah.
that was impossible for me just a couple of years ago. But because I knew I was going to have to hand it off, and I knew that I didn't want to pay top
Yeah.
dollar to somebody to to
Yeah.
do it. It forced me to be more efficient with it. And that's what's going to happen. And that's
Yeah.
what should happen.
Mm.
You should be looking at, how do I automate? How do I streamline my every part of my process? You should, and by the way, that whole documentation assignment that I talked about, make a process, you write a process for this. You should have them do that for literally everything they do
Yeah.
from
Mm.
day one. Document this, write a process for doing this, and let's look at that process and refine that. Okay, let's try it for a week. Okay, we've been doing this for a week. Something's not quite working. Let's adjust that process. And that helps you in myriad ways. Not only are you prepared for the eventuality of that person moving on, but it also kind of helps you get an overview of how your business works and where your problem points are, you know. And by the way, you can bring this person in for more hours if you need to. And you can also, at $300, I'm not going to say it's cheap for just anybody, because $300 is a lot of money for some people, right? And I'm one of them. Like, I don't just have an extra $300 to throw around all the time, but it's cheap enough that I can say, you know what? I need somebody to help with a Kickstarter campaign, but it's not like I'm going to need them indefinitely. You can reach out and hire someone specifically for that task with the full on knowledge that, you only need them for a month or two.
Yeah,
Um,
that's great. I reckon
yeah,
that's awesome. You know?
really need to rethink what this is, because we think of it like, okay, I'm hiring someone.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's also like you're paying for a service. You can pay for a specific service. So
Hmm.
like, you don't have to have a VA who can do all the things. You can
Mm.
have a VA who does the one major pain point you have, and then bring someone else in to solve this other piece. Because a lot of problems we have as authors aren't like ongoing permanent problems. I don't need somebody to build a website for me every month,
Mhm.
you know?
No.
Do you,
I
for
don't,
that 40 hours a month, can you split that
yeah.
between two VAs or is that per person?
No, it's going to be per person,
Mm-hmm.
and that platform fee is also per VA.
Yeah.
Got you. Yeah,
Um,
makes
it's just
sense.
the only way. It's the only way we can make that work. Because
Yeah,
if you start trying to split it up, you end up with it gets crazy, and
yeah,
then no one
Yeah.
knows
totally.
who's paying for what.
Yeah.
And because you
Yeah.
are paying these, you're going to be paying the VAs directly through.
Right.
We set you up. We'll help you set up. It's Wise, I think,
Mm-hmm.
is
Yep.
the service that we use, because that's the one that works best with international payments. But we're going to help you get set up with that. So, you're paying the VA. We're not going to pay them on your behalf. There's no like tax scenario to worry about. You can't claim them as an actual employee. That's against the law of the Philippines.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of those things that that work to your advantage.
Mm-hmm.
It
So
does
you don't
take
have
the
to worry
fear
about.
out of it a little bit, right? Because I
Yeah,
think for a
yeah,
lot of people that we talk to, they're just like, I just don't know where to start. And
yeah,
because like you say, we started off writing. That was our thing. We
yeah.
weren't trained to do anything else. And then all of a sudden, this business is gone and we have all these other balls in the air and we don't know what to do. But coming
Right.
to you guys, it really takes the scariness out of it because you guys,
That's the whole point. Is
yeah,
like, so this is how BookBrush was built, by the way, was
Mm.
yeah,
using
love
VAs.
Bookbrush. Yeah.
Mm.
Did I say
So the
BookBrush? I
HR
said BookBrush.
person, ex-HR person in me is asking what's protecting the VA from the VA side of point of view? Are the fees paid up front in advance of that month's work?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not 100% certain on that. I
Okay.
think that I think you
It's all
get
right. I
billed.
just,
Yeah,
I would
I'm
like
pretty
to
sure you
think that
get
every
billed.
author meets their obligations, but not every author meets their obligations. So I'd hate
Right.
to think of people having put in, 40 hours a month work and not actually end up.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think it gets kind of automated. So
Got you.
but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's likely that it's billed at the end, because you might go over the number of hours.
Right.
You might ask
Yeah.
them to do more than just 40 hours, and so they're
Yeah.
gonna want to get paid for that.
Yeah.
A lot of them, though, I say that, but a lot, you know, my VA will go. She'll do stuff like I just we know the number of hours. We've got it to like 15 hours a week, right? But she'll do like 30 hours of stuff. I mean, she doesn't charge me for the time she spends on it, which I've kind of gotten on her about. Like, don't do that because,
Yeah.
I might get used to that. First of all, I don't want to take advantage of you.
Yeah.
So you bill for the hours you work. Let's track that. Let's make sure we're tracking that. And we give you tools, by the way, for tracking,
That's
what their
cool.
tasks
Yeah.
are and the number of hours.
Yeah.
It's basic stuff. It's like Google Sheets and things like that.
Yeah.
But, we make that easy.
So
Yeah.
just as we're coming to the end of it, Kevin, just from going back to the author side of it in terms of the mentality around it, you've mentioned before about making sure, it's a good practice to have those processes in place. And also, I
Yeah.
guess, be aware of that it might involve more time on your part initially, just getting that kind of
Yeah.
set up. Is there any more tips on like getting the mindset or just how an author should approach it?
I mean, those are the key things. I mean, coming in knowing that, I mean, the primary thing is you need to know that like this person isn't going to be a Swiss Army knife solving all your
No,
problems,
that's
right?
right. Yeah.
Just like you have limited time, they've got the same exact limited time that you have. But as long as your mentality is you're going to work with this person, like if you've picked that primary pain point, you're going to solve that. One thing that you might want to keep in mind is that like once you kind of figure out how a resolution for your main problem, it usually gets a lot easier to solve and takes a lot less time. So that's when you can start adding things to their pile, right? Because a lot of times marketing, for example, is the kind of thing that you can put on basically autopilot, especially if they're just kind of checking in every other day or whatever to make sure things are going smoothly or whatever. Once you've kind of worked out that process, that's the hard part. That's the thing you're going to spend the most time on is working those things out. I'm sorry I keep tapping my microphone. There is a reason. There's a glitch in my microphone.
I
That,
thought it was a habit. I thought you.
yeah, really sorry about that.
No.
That's
But
fine.
if I
Don't
want to
worry.
be able to hear you guys, sometimes I have to tap it. I don't know why.
No, it's all good.
Uh, it's annoying. But anyway, once you've kind of worked through the hard stuff, you'll get to a point where that's much easier. And so now all you got to do is put that on autopilot, and you can actually have them suggest things like, okay, what else could we work on together?
Yeah.
Like think of this person. This is this is a good answer to that question of like the mentality. This person is a partner with you in this aspect of your business,
Yeah.
right? You can have them, there's you can have a VA come on board to help with, editing your manuscripts, building your covers, finding beta readers, whatever it is. But what you want to do is, you want to bring someone on who's going to click with the spirit of your business
Yeah.
so that you can grow together and they can give them some say in what they do next. Give them a little bit of
Yeah.
autonomy. I really prefer my VA to have a lot of autonomy. I don't want to have to manage anybody,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I want her to
Yeah.
be self-starter, self-motivated,
Yeah.
but she can only do that if she knows what my pain points are,
Mm.
what my needs are, and the way in which I need them solved. And that comes through communication. So, those are
Yeah.
the important things to kind of keep in mind.
You've really got to have a personality, get on, don't you? It's got to be, you've got to click, with your VA.
Yeah.
And I think anyone listening will be so happy to have heard this because, as I say, we've been talking to people for so long about getting VAs and they just have been scary and leery of doing it. But this actually
Yeah.
is a great process.
This is actually a really good way to kind of get into the whole
Yeah.
ecosystem of it because it's there's no real risk. I mean, you at most you're going to put $300 on the line.
Yeah.
$299. Actually, if you use our little promo link, it's only $250 for the
Wow.
first
Okay.
month.
Yeah. That's
Uh,
so cool.
yeah. So I should mention that, by the way. Like we have in order for you to sign up for for this discovery call, there's a special link that you guys can give out to your
Brilliant.
listeners.
for that.
Are you
I'm
ready
lucky
for it? Should we
away.
talk
Yeah,
about it
go
now?
for it.
Yeah,
I've
go
got my
for it.
pen
Okay.
ready.
If you go to authoranchor.com/promo, that will take you to a little calendar page where you can pick a date. We're working on a little intake form that we're going to start giving to people to kind of help you figure out what your main pain point is. But go in with that idea, like here's the main thing I want to deal with, and then like here's a list of some nice to haves. But you'll set up a call. You might end up talking with Josh, the one of the founders of BookBrush. He takes some of these calls. But they'll work with you to find the perfect VA. If you use that link, we're going to give you $50 off in the first month of the service.
Brilliant.
Cool.
That's so cool.
And
That is so
if you go to authoranchor.com, though, you can see a really handsome guy. He's really good looking.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Who would that be, do you think?
He's the face of Author Anchor.
They've employed some spokesmodel.
That's
the
awesome.
irony of this is that they hired me off of Fiverr. So
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much. That is so informative. Actually, I think we've all actually learned a lot as well, and know that our listeners are going to love every minute of it. You girls got anything else you want to ask?
No, that was great. Thank you so much for your time again, Kevin, and hopefully it won't be another 7 years.
Let's make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah, it should not be 7 years.
So, to be honest, if we're all still here in 7 years' time, Kevin,
I don't
time
like
to commit us somewhere.
Might be all
if you hire a
VA. We'll get all our VAs to sit here and do it.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah. Get our VAs.
All right. So, and if you want to come along to the Spa Girls, we're at spargirlspodcast.com. We're on Patreon at Spa Girls Podcast. If you want to check out our offerings there.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening, and we got where we can find you. It's at Author Anchor. And thanks for listening, and we'll see you all, or hear you all, or talk to you all again in another week.
Yeah.
Bye
See ya.
for now.
Bye-bye.
Well,
Bye.
bye.